man?
No.
This guy hits French apps every night. I told him to go to bed.
Je ne
He's
parle.
learning French.
Je ne parle. What's that word? What's it mean?
I am.
I am. Antoine. Francois Louis Lavasseur. My name. Matisse. Half Indian, half French. Capitaine du Milice Le Lieutenant means captain of the civilian military of Fort Lieutenant. Je suis. And you?
Cool. Democrat Cool.
Ah. And you?
Democrat Andre.
Say it again.
Democrat Andre.
Andre. How old? How old are you?
10?
Are you?
10? You're 10? No, 9. I'm 11. Oh.
Okay.
How do you say 9 in Finnish?
I tell you, my daughter, my granddaughters, and my wife are in competition together, and they all do French. And so they found an app called Duolingo,
That's what I
Is that what you use?
and you can learn the language. And they do it because they speak French anyway, but they do it to see who can be the number one. They compete against each other. It's fun.
But they probably don't do it after 10 o'clock at night, right? Shuts down at 10 o'clock.
No answer. No answer. No answer.
So this is a really interesting story. You should start over.
Okay. I tell you who I am. I'm here to talk about a period from 1790 to 1820. What year were you born? None of those, right? 1719 to 1820. In 1794 was probably the last battle that there was a native alliance with Europeans. Okay? Before that, the natives were aligning themselves with British, French, whatever, to fight. In 1794, the tribes in this area, aligned themselves with the Canadians and the British from Canada to fight the Americans. Because in 1794 now, the colonies had already kicked the British out of America and made it America. Okay? So now we have another battle going on. This battle happened over in Ohio by the river, Maumee River, and there's a Fort Maumee over there, and that's where it happened. 2 years before that battle, a tornado went through and knocked trees down. So the battle was named the Battle of Fallen Timbers. Okay, Battle of Fallen Timbers.
Wait, you learned that in school or what?
Yeah, it's
And that's basically probably the last native alliance with European battle. The Canadian British had promised the natives that if you start to lose and you're falling back, come into the fort and we'll fight from the fort. Well, they started to lose, and by the time they got to the fort, the British had locked the gates and wouldn't let them in. So all those natives came back to their villages here in Indiana. Okay? Some of the leaders of those villages, and I'm going to give you 7 of them to try and remember. Wawasee. You know Wawasee? Okay? Wawasee in English is full moon. Wawasee means full moon. Papakeechie. He was known as Flat Belly in English. As an adult male, the natives said he weighed 3 lions. A lion weighs about 100 pounds. He was about a 300-pound man. as an adult, but he was called Flat Belly. Okay. Then you had a chief over here, Topinabe, which means he who sits quietly. Then you had chief over here, Shipshawana, Chief Shipshawana. Shipshawana means vision of a lion. Then you had Mati, chief over here. That means sulks, S-U-L-K-S in English. Then you had Little Turtle of the Miami. And then you had Wang Se, 5 coins of 5 metals. And then there were 2 other chiefs, and they were both named Winnemac. I don't know, have enough background on them. But one was pro-American, one was against America. Okay? Those guys got together and decided to sign a treaty with America not to fight anymore. And they signed the Treaty of Greenville. Okay? As a native, there's 2 things you got to do. One is you have to protect your family, and the other is you have to provide for your family. Provide and protect. Provide and protect. We signed a treaty, we're not going to fight the Americans anymore. One of the problems now is, since the American Revolution, more Europeans are coming across the Alleghenies into Indiana. In the 1700s, Indiana was a dense forest. In some places, you could hardly walk through the forest. There were so many woods. What problems is we didn't have a good negotiator, a good person to speak for both parties. And so the Europeans were coming over the mountains, and they were doing the same thing. I got to provide for my family and protect my family. And the native has got to provide and protect his family. But nobody was sharing that information. So the Europeans came over, and they were farmers, right? So they needed a house, they needed land to grow crops, to feed their cattle and their horses. The natives were warriors, hunters. So they hunted. The more you cut down the woods, the 3 main food sources, elk, black bear, and woodland bison, have nowhere to live. So the elk and the black bear went to Michigan. The woodland buffalo went across the Mississippi. How do I provide and protect for my family when I have no food source? The families are still growing the 3 sisters, the beans, the squash, and the corn, but it's not enough to take through to the winter. And we needed that meat, the protein, to take us through the winter. So the families are starving. But we signed the paper, we're not going to fight the Americans anymore. So those leaders got together and decided we need to go talk to the chiefs of the Americans. So they got on a boat up in Detroit and went to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to the government to see the President of the United States. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, because that's where it was. And the President was George Washington. And Washington agreed that they needed to be civilized natives. And they needed to learn to farm. They're going to take a warrior hunter and turn him into a farmer. And they said, okay, we'll farm. So he decided, Washington said, so they came back and Washington sent them the farming equipment and annuities, other stuff, to Detroit so they can get it. How long does it take to walk to Detroit from here?
Very long.
So they would have to walk from here all the way to Detroit to get their farming equipment and their annuities and bring it back here. Now I got the farming equipment, what do I do with it? I'm a hunter warrior. How do I use it? There's nobody to teach me. They waited 5 years before they went back. I said, I'd have waited 6 weeks and I'd have been on my booth. You understand what I'm saying? But they waited 5 years and then decided to go back talk to the Chief of the Americans. By then, the capital of America had moved from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to a place called Washington, D.C. And the president now is Thomas Jefferson. The chiefs decided, before we go see Jefferson, we're going to go to Baltimore and talk to the Dutch and see if they would come and put a mission in our area and teach us how to farm. And they got that arranged, and then they went to see Jefferson. Jefferson said, yeah, you need to be farmers. And he said, I understand how long it takes you to get to Detroit. We'll send the stuff to this new fort we built after Mad Anthony Wayne, called Fort Wayne, and you can pick your stuff up at Fort Wayne. And in fact, Little Turtle, we're going to let your son-in-law be in charge of it. Little Turtle's son-in-law was William Wells. You know your Indiana history. Fort Wayne and William Wells go together. Okay? William Wells was a young kid when he got captured, and he was raised in Miami. He married Little Turtle's daughter, but he was European. Okay? So the annuities and the farming equipment came to Fort Wayne to William Wells. Wells decided he wasn't going to let the Dutch come into the villages. They had to stay up at Fort Wayne. Well, the farming's supposed to happen here. I gotta go. The Dutch got fed up and went home. The villagers here got less and less annuity every year, but Wells got richer and richer and richer. Till eventually, two brothers rose up over here in Lafayette, Indiana. One of them was one of the best speakers you would ever want to hear. In fact, he was born under a miracle, or whatever you want to call it, a shooting star. He was known as Panther in the Sky, tout comme ça. And everybody, when they listened to him, he just captured it. Tout comme ça? Tout comme ça. And then his brother talked about all these different things that would happen in the future, and it happened. He told them to go back to being warriors, go back to being hunters, don't be farmers. He said, in fact, on this date, at this time, in the middle of the day, everything will go dark. Because Gitchimindo, the creator, is saying that you need to go back to your ways. And on that date and that time, there was an eclipse. And so here you had all these chiefs out here trying to keep their young men from going to war because they signed the peace treaty. And here we have these two brothers. The young man went with Tecumseh and the Prophet. We had the War of 1812. And then the next thing you got the Trail of Tears and the Trail of Pearls. Trail of Death. Okay?
Great.
Any questions?
Andre, tell me everything you just learned. We go
All right.
We go to camp.